Hi everybody, Dr. Pingle here with a quick video showing you some of the steps that are going to be required for assignment 1. So assignment 1 asks you to use Google Public Data Explorer and Gapminder to create 10 plots highlighting the capabilities of both of those. So there's no strict requirement about how many need to be from Google Public Data Explorer or Gapminder, but it should be a little bit balanced. Google Public Data Explorer has a bit more functionality, so you may want to have a few more of those than Gapminder. But I'll leave the specifics up to you. The idea is to showcase what these can do, and so Gapminder is pretty straightforward. The Google Public Data Explorer sometimes is not. So if you start out at the Google Public Data Explorer, you can see a number of different examples, and these kind of highlight what you can do. So I would encourage you to spend a little bit of time looking at each of these plots, looking at the text that supports it. There are a large number of data sets in here. One of the easiest ways to get started is just to use the World Bank data, which is perfectly fine. You're welcome to explore other data sets as well, so some of those are listed here. So if you just click on Explore this data on this example, something like this will come up. So this is a plot of life expectancy versus fertility rate. So you can see a negative relationship on this scatter plot, and you've got a number of different options that you can use to control what you see. So the default here is a scatter plot, or in this case a bubble chart, since the size of the circle is scaled to a third variable, in this case population. But you can also make some pretty simple proportional circle maps. You can make some pretty simple bar graphs. You can make some line plots. And so you can explore the different variables as you go through. The World Bank development indicators are classified in these categories. So you can browse through here. So for instance, you can look at economic policy, you could look at GDP per capita, and it would show that. You can also come down here and you can add specific sections. So if you click on South Asia, that's going to show up on the plot. You can drill down and find particular countries. So if you zoom in here and you wanted to see what is going on with Armenia, you could do that. Nice ways of sort of adding and subtracting various pieces. You can also do both of these via the search here. So if you wanted to see the United States, you can type it in and use autocomplete functions, which is nice. You can also look for particular variables. So you might look at something like CO2 emissions per capita, and you can show that instead. So that's telling us a story of CO2 emissions per capita for the world, for the United States, which is obviously much higher. But here's a pattern that you may or may not be familiar with, that CO2 emissions per capita in the United States has actually been falling. And so you can see that as well. All of these different graphs and plots are ways of exploring geographic data. So this is a really quick and easy way of making an argument or finding data to support your argument. And so even if this isn't GIS proper, it's a really handy way of getting to the bottom of some of these relationships quickly, easily. All of these links are shareable, so you can click on this and get a URL that you can send somebody. You can obviously take screenshots and paste these wherever you like. So it's a powerful way of viewing the data, and that's why I wanted to share it with you. In this case, what I wanted to do is show you maybe what the expectations of the assignment are and how you'd go about it. So in this case, what we might want to do is make a scatter plot. So we might look at something like GDP per capita, and we'll put that on the x-axis. And so we're going to load up a scatter plot here. And we are going to add in CO2 emissions per capita. And we'll put that on the y-axis. And we can add a lot of other things in here as well. We can label countries. We can color this by region. So if you come up here, that's not what we want. Here we go. If you come down here, we could say, let's compare by region. These would be the regions. We might want to go back and look at countries. We can click on region and we can say color by this, which is how it was at the beginning. So we've got a key here that indicates what the colors are. And we can add a third variable here if we want to. We could add population and put that as size. And so you can see India and China showing up here, and here's the United States. Now, this data is fairly clustered at the bottom, and as we've discussed in class, what you may want to do is use a log transform to pull that out. So instead of a linear axis, we've got a logarithmic axis, so this goes up by a certain factor, so 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. And we could do the same thing on the y-axis, which helps find these patterns. So it's much easier to see sort of a straight line relationship here through the log transform than it would be otherwise. So if you're making the case that these two variables are related, and they certainly are, this is maybe a better way to do it. We can label various features. So one of the handy things about a scatter plot is it helps identify not only the general trend, but outliers. This, for instance, is an outlier. So here's Macau. You can click on the dot and you can drag the labels around, which is a nice way of sort of getting to the bottom of particular pieces. So you can explore and browse the data that way, which is very handy. You can also, if you're looking for particular countries, you don't need to click on all these dots. You can actually just search for them up there. So a lot of really nice functionality to get you looking at this data quickly and easily. Now, if you want to, for the purposes of the assignment, you're going to use OneNote to do it. So if you start OneNote, you'll get a page that looks something like this. There's some really good YouTube videos on sort of some introduction here, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But you can do things like add pages. In this case, you can, you might call this Assignment 1, Google Public Data Explorer, and Gapminder. Now, you can insert all kinds of different things in here. So pictures, recordings, videos, files, lots of stuff can be placed in here. What I want to do is just take a quick screenshot of what I've got here. So I'm going to use a tool called the snipping tool, which you can find in Windows here. So if you just start typing, you can find it. This is just a tool that comes with Windows. How you capture a screenshot is kind of up to you, but I like the snipping tool. So you can just drag a little box around what you want. This is going to catch a little bit of me in here, so oops. But we'll copy that and we'll paste that into a document. All right, so here's our screen grab of that, and we can shrink it, we can move it around, and obviously you're not going to have a screenshot of you in there. Now what I'd like you to do is add a couple of pieces in here, so you might add a label that highlights what's going on here. So Sub-Saharan Africa is kind of showing up over here, and maybe we want to call attention to that, so we could place a label over here, and you might draw a little arrow kind of pointing to that if you want. So you can annotate these. Again, notebooks really aren't polished products, so you're free to be a little bit more freeform and casual with these. You might want to also add some text here. So I've written some out. So this is one example of a notebook that I put together. You can save these and export them in ways that you're probably familiar with, so I'm not going to go into that detail. But I've crafted a little bit of text here to sort of talk about what's going on, how it was made, the log transform, a couple of different key pieces in here. So that's all that's required, is just sort of a short paragraph commenting on how you made it, maybe the general pattern, things like that. To submit as part of the assignment, you're not going to submit. If you noticed, what this does is it saves it as a .1 file. Rather than submitting those, what I'm going to have you do is export these as PDFs, which is going to make grading a little bit easier for these. So I'll let you walk through that, but it's probably things that you're pretty used to already. If you want to separate these out into Google Public Data Explorer and Gapminder, you're welcome to do that. And then you can either export two PDFs and turn them both in, or you can combine them into a single PDF. So that's a quick walkthrough about assignment 1. Let me know if you have questions. Google Public Data Explorer in particular can be a little bit finicky. Not all data is going to be available for all years. Sometimes you're going to have to drill down and pick a subcategory, but it's a really powerful functionality. And so I would really encourage you to explore. Don't turn in 10 scatter plots. Look at line graphs, look at maps, play around with the different options. Your job in this assignment is to explain to me and to demonstrate to me that you've really learned how this stuff works and are capable of creating a variety of different geovisualizations from it. As always, see me if you have questions or ask TAs. Thanks very much.